Umai ki roto, umai ki roto. Kapai, we still got a few coming through the door. Kuhumai, kuhumai. Good to see everybody that braves the elements of Te KOTAHITANGA, te whanitui ātara. Lovely to see all of our whānau here. Hoi anō tēnā tātou. Tēnā tātou e hui tahi nei kei ngā take o mā tairangi o taki te keo e tū mai ana. Tēnā tātou o tēnā ngā waka o kura aupoa, o tēnā ngā waka ko tā kitimu e hui tahi nei. Ka nui te mihi. Ka tikara kia mihi ki tēnā i o tātou ne mate. Kai tēnā marae, kai tēnā marae, kai tēnā marae o tata. Te tini te nui o rātau, I takataka ia I tērā te ara whānui a tāne ki te wāhi e kore hoki mai. Nō reira koutou rā ki o koutou. Hoki mai rā ki a tātou te kanohi ora. Tātou e pikau hea ngā tūmanako, ngā wawata, ngā moimoi ia, I mahu e te I waihoa tea e o tātou ne mātua tipuna ki a tātou e hui kanohi nei. Nō reira e kui e karau. Tā whiti mai rā ke nā ngā uri o e nā waka me ki rā kahunguru ki te Wairoa tēnei te mihi haramai, haramai, haramai rā. He rā whakahirahira tēnei. He tīmatatanga tēnei matatau. Nō reira āku nui, āku rahi. Ko tāku nei e mihi ki a tātou katoa. Tēnā tātou e pūhia nei e te hau. Tēnā tātou e uhia nei e te ua. A tēnā tātou e whitia nei e te rā. Kia timata tō tātou nei hui kairunga I te rangi Māori. Me te o tōna haere ake kairunga I te rangi Māori e no reira me ino I tata. Ko te karakia Mo heo tea whānui te te motu, te karakia o te atua. Nā tātou tēnei. E te atua tohungi a mātou, e te karaiti tohungi a mātou. E te atua tohungi a mātou, e tō mātou matu I te rangi. Kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tai mai tō rangatiratanga. Kia mea te atau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. O mai kia mātou ai anei he taro mō mātou mō te nina. Muru o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei tohunga e hara ni kia mātou. O hoki mātou e kau ea kia whakawaia, engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino. No hoki te rangatiratanga, te kaha me te karoria, ake, āmine. Tēnā tātou umai tāmati haramai, haramai rā, umai rā. Plenty seats up the front here. Palanga. Hoi anō, lovely day that you braved the elements. Good to see everybody here. And we're bang on time, so I'll pass to our chairperson now, to Leon Symes, our chairperson of Tātou Tātou o te Wairoa. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Piri, for your warm words and welcome here to Whanganui-a-Tara. Obviously, the weather has turned it on for us again. You may have comfort in when we had the huri up in Wairoa, the weather was actually the same, so it may be us that have brought the weather down to you this time round. So yeah, thank you for everyone for turning up this morning and taking time out to be here for our presentation. We're on a journey of a roadshow as such, or we call it an engagement hui, where we're going around the motu and presenting basically in two parts where our settlement is at currently in terms of where we've come through in the historical context, as well as where we are moving to into the future. So this is your opportunity to provide some feedback, some engagement to our trustees, help formulate the basically when we ratified the deed, which is roughly about 12 months ago now when we last came around and saw everyone. We're in the process now of getting your feedback on what that final asset arrangement, asset representation will look like into the future. So this is what our presentation is all about today. Obviously we need your feedback and direction. We want to make sure we engage with our members, include their feedback and get them involved in the process. Obviously the 14 trustees as part of the trustee have been required that we run a series of consultation hui around the country to make sure that our members are fully informed about where we are at and where we're heading to. And a key part of the second part of our presentation is split into two. There's a workshop session, and obviously in that session there's a key where you're able to express what your, basically what in terms of is your aspirations, values and principles concerning what's important to you. But also we've come up with some 3 conceptual models to begin with to guide our thinking in terms of what a long-term representation and governance asset ownership arrangement model will look like into the future. So basically that's a crux of what we are here today to present to you. Obviously there's some health and safety issues, obviously the exits are clearly marked. You're all pretty much well aware of the earthquake drills. They want us to remain in here until the earthquake is, if there is an earthquake, settled before we move out to evacuation points, which is just out there in the RT squares there. Obviously the wharepakus, as you were coming through this door on our right, the wahine is the one up on the second level and the tani is the one down on the front. So if there's no further ado, I would just like to get into the presentation. After the presentation, there's a short Q&A. Obviously, I want to focus our questions and answers on our historical context and the process going forward. There's a lot that comes out of the presentation about values, principles, the models, pros and cons. We want to save that kōrero to the workshops, and we'll break into 2 particular workshops. What we found interesting yesterday when we were in our hui in Ahuriri there, we spoke into kaumātua rangatahi to get the different perspective. I think we're going to still persist and continue with that particular model. So the kaumātua will sit here. We've got a room available next door where the rangatahi will go next door, and right on the, you would see over there on the right, there's some printed out sheets of what the thoughts we are. So while we've got you here, we want to capture your input, because at the end of the day, it's you that make the decision on the final direction on where we want to head. Not the 14 trustees. They're here to gather your information, collect it, collate it into models as such. So we'll be coming back around in November with some detailed models of what the final asset and governance representations will look like. And from there, early next year, particularly around in March, you'll get to vote. You need to vote on particular recommendations that the trustees will come back with you on. With that, the presentation explained it. Obviously, the booklets, as Scott said, that there's, if you haven't got a booklet, we'll take your address and we can send one out to you. Obviously, our whānau up in Wairoa and Ahuriri took all the booklets, and there's only a few left, so, but we'll make sure we get some out to you. Kia ora.
Our history is a many-layered history. It is a complex history. It is a history where we fought with the Crown. It is a history where we fought against the Crown.
The word te arawhiti means bridge and refers to something that connects items together. It also refers to a journey towards enlightenment or knowledge.
Today, is about two big things. It is remembrance, it is remembering our past, it is remembering those who laid the pathway for us, and it's about celebrating this day. This is not the end of our journey, this is just one part of it. And in receiving the Crown's apology and signing the deed of settlement, it is those three instruments that together that will then allow us to turn around our waka and face it back towards the sun.
Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai. Thank you for joining us today for our first round of engagement hui on where we are at and what we need to do. We are Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa Trust, the post-settlement governance entity for the iwi and hapu of Te Rohe o Te Wairoa. It is our responsibility on behalf of our iwi and hapu to manage the redress that will be received as part of our settlement with the Crown. We are almost through the final stages of our journey to settle all of our historical Treaty of Waitangi claims. We are also in the process of transitioning from our negotiating body, Te Tira Whakaemi o Te Wairoa, to our PSGE Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa. Today's hui is an opportunity to hear more about the process, what we as the Trust have been up to, and the next steps, where to from here. What you tell us during this engagement hui is critical to help shape the thinking on our future representative structure, which currently has 7 kāhui or clusters and about asset ownership arrangements. The presentation is approximately 30 minutes long. Following this presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we will break into smaller groups to workshop some of the kōrero. The workshops are a chance for you to provide feedback and raise any initial thoughts. We have allocated 30 minutes for the questions and answers. Following the workshop session, we will have a kapu tea, so you can meet your representatives and our support teams who are here today. If you are not yet a registered member of Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa, we can help you to register today. We are holding 9 hui across Aotearoa, in Wairoa, Ahuriri Napier, Te Whanganui Atara Wellington, Rotorua, Kirikiriroa Hamilton, Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland, Papaioia Palmerston North, Waihopai Invercargill, me Otautahi in Christchurch. The information presented at each hui is exactly the same and will cover our journey to this point, including a quick recap of negotiations and the lead up to the deed of settlement signing. A look at the parliamentary process where our settlement is currently sitting and the potential time frame moving forward. Our aspirations, values and principles looking back to 2012 when these were created, and 3 concepts that could make up our future structure. Your feedback and thoughts are really important. What you tell us now will help Tātou Tātou o Te Wairoa land on our direction and approach. We will be canvassing your views for the next 6 months. Today's consultation hui is the first of 3 phases between now and February next year. In November, we will come back to our people with more details and models based on your feedback. Once we have landed on a direction and structure, we will need you to vote on that. For now though, we simply want your thoughts and ideas.
There are a number of people who've guided us, who led us, who provided inspiration for us, who annoyed us, who took us to task, who told us off, but they were all part of the rich tapestry of our journey. And I think that's something we shouldn't forget when we get to the other side. They all contributed, big, little, small, whatever way it was. They created the tapestry. That's what we're looking at today.
Before we talk about our aspirations, values and principles, we are going to take a quick look back at how we arrived at this point. Our journey to settlement. Treaty of Waitangi claims in our district have a long and significant history dating back to the early 1980s. In 2002, iwi and hapu met and decided to work together to progress our claims across the district under the auspices of the Wairoa Working Group. This was the genesis of Te Tira Whakaemi o Te Wairoa. In 2009, Te Tira Whakaemi o Te Wairoa had its mandate approved, which allowed us to negotiate with the Crown. It took a lot of hard work, but Te Tira reached the best deal possible for our iwi and hapu. Our settlement was initialled in May last year and then had one of the highest turnouts during ratification. It was accepted by 96% of those who voted, which is one of the strongest settlement votes to date. Our settlement is now before Parliament. It has been read once and is currently being considered by the Mauri Affairs Select Committee. The committee has heard submissions and held a hearing in Wairoa. We expect the second reading to be in November and a third reading in March next year, where we want as many of our whānau to attend as possible. All going well, the settlement should be given the royal tick of approval next May. This is where we'll receive our recognition and have the agreed assets returned to us by the Crown. We'll now look briefly at the settlement, which includes the Crown apology delivered at our signing last year, an agreed historical account, Crown acknowledgements of treaty breaches, cultural redress that recognises the traditional, historical and spiritual associations people have with whenua and sites owned by the Crown in Aotearoa, and financial and commercial redress that has a total value of $100 million. Further details about the settlement can be found on our website or on page 7 in your information booklet. Once the settlement has made its way through Parliament, tātou o Te Wairoa will receive and administer the redress and any future assets. It is an exciting time for our iwi and hapu. Since the deed of settlement signing in November last year, trustees have met monthly in Wairoa. Pānui from those hui are posted on our website. We have been putting together our work plan that is focused on determining the final asset and representation arrangements, which we will go through shortly in more detail. We have also engaged with our neighbouring iwi, the local community, councils and government agencies. We will now focus on the two areas where we want your feedback, thoughts and questions. Firstly, your aspirations, values and principles. There is a whakatauki, ti tiro whakamuri kia mohio ai koe te huarahi, kei mua o a koe. You know not your future until you know your past. In 2012, a series of workshops were held to identify our aspirations as we work towards the settlement. At the time, our kāhui said the aspiration, or moimoia, was to be happy, loving, healthy and wealthy tangata whenua. Kāhui also agreed these values and principles were really important to our iwi and hapu. Mana motu hake, mana moana, mana tangata, mana whenua, manaakitanga, peace and tranquility, tino rangatiratanga, kaitiakitanga, cultural identity, tikanga, Maori worldview, rangatiratanga, arikitanga, mana rangatira, awhi, rangimarie, aroha, whakapapa, te reo me ona tikanga. The values were captured in this statement. Aroha, tika, awhi, manaki, rangimarie, as a driving force in our decision-making and treatment of one another. The ideas, aspirations and initiatives were visionary. Tātou o Te Wairoa Trust acknowledges what our whānau, hapu and iwi all said in 2012. We now want to know whether your aspirations, values, principles or expected behaviours have changed, and are we missing anything? What you tell us will refine those ideas and more clearly identify what success looks like for te rohe o te Wairoa. Following our questions and answers session, we will hold a workshop to talk further about this kaupapa.
The challenge for tātou o te Wairoa is the utilisation of what we received in our settlements to ameliorate the circumstances of our people, to support and nurture our kōrero, our tikanga, our reo, and cultural well-being, to support our role as kaitiaki over our taonga, to provide a catalyst for tribal and district development, and to continue, as we have done in the past, to provide a positive contribution to our people, the district, the region and the nation.
E anga whakamua ana te waka, forging a new path. We will now look at 3 asset and representation concepts. Your feedback will help form the basis for developing our post-settlement governance models. There are a range and mixture of potential models. We will use your feedback to work on these models between now and the second round of Engagement Hui in November. The 3 concepts presented today reflect possibilities at each end of the scale and a middle option. The 3 concepts are devolution, whakatohatoha, collaboration, mahi tahi, and amalgamation, KOTAHITANGA. Each of these concepts could be applied separately to assets and representation arrangements. It will be possible to incorporate aspects of different concepts in our new PSGE structure. For example, you might like to see more amalgamation in the way assets are held and more devolution in terms of representation, or vice versa. Throughout the rest of this presentation, you will hear the term groupings used. We have not made any determinations about what those groupings could look like. It may be that they are similar to the existing clusters known as our kāhui, or they could be groupings along different lines. Whakatohatoha, or devolution, would potentially mean no ongoing collective entity. Grouping-based representation, where each group is responsible for their own asset management and each grouping receives their own share of assets. There would be no collective decision-making. Under the concept of mahi tahi, collaboration, groupings would work together with a singular entity. With grouping-based representation, a combination of groupings and centralised asset ownership, with collective decision-making while ensuring we retain individual autonomy. The third concept is kotahitanga, amalgamation, one collective entity, where representation is determined by the entity, potentially with no groupings. All assets would be held by this entity, which makes all decisions. It is important to understand these are concepts only. We are not asking you to choose which one fits best for you today. We simply want your feedback. For example, what do you like and why? And have we missed anything? There are a number of different options and possibilities of how these concepts could be structured. Once we have all of the feedback, we will consider that and further develop the concepts to include more detail. We will now look a bit closer at each concept and their pros and cons. All of this information is contained in the information booklet and can be found on our website. The first concept is whakatohatoha, devolution. In this scenario, complete devolution would suggest that all assets are distributed to groupings. The groupings are solely responsible for asset management and no assets would be held by tātou or te Wairoa Trust. Mahi tahi, collaboration might look like this. Groupings hold some assets and are responsible for those. Tātou or te Wairoa Trust would also hold some assets. Together, groupings and tātou decide which assets go where. The third concept is kotahitanga, amalgamation. Complete amalgamation would suggest that all assets are centralised and held by tātou or te Wairoa Trust. Tātou is solely responsible for asset management and no assets are distributed to groupings. We will now look at representation. Under whakatohatoha, more devolution might suggest that groupings decide how they appoint representatives and the decision-making powers of those representatives. Tātou or te Wairoa Trust ceases to exist. Under mahi tahi, to reflect a collaborative approach, groupings might appoint representatives to tātou or te Wairoa Trust. Each grouping decides how they want to appoint their representatives. Under KOTAHITANGA, representation could be decided by voting at large, not by groupings. For example, the people with the most votes would be appointed. Groupings cease to exist.
The hui that was held here at Takitimu Marae enabled the Crown to face the facts about past actions and omissions.
This is a glorious occasion, and we've heard today so many reasons why it is. And we must not ever, ever forget any of those things. It is who we are. However, we have spent too long judging our own past, too long judging the actions of our tipuna. And so Te Arawhiti is really about symbolising that part of our past and the need to put it behind us and start to make our way into the future.
Let's now look at the pros and cons of the three concepts. Remember, these are concepts only. They might not reflect our final structure, which could be a blend of all three. We'll start with the pros of whakatohatoha. Whānau are closer to decision-making. Groupings take responsibility for the advancement of their own members and their own projects. More mana motu hake at a whānau and kāinga level. The pros of mahi tahi are whānau participate in decision-making at a grouping level, and that feeds up to tātou o te Wairoa Trust in a similar way to our current structure. Mahi tahi gives more mana motu hake than the total centralisation concept kotahitanga. It provides the ability for groupings to advance their own projects and the ability to combine resources for regional projects and administration work. Combining some assets achieves economies of scale and more economic clout when dealing with the Crown, local authorities or corporates. There is less duplication, so the resources are not wasted, and a shared vision between groupings is upheld by tātou o te Wairoa Trust. For kotahitanga, grouping assets achieves economies of scale. It is easier for third parties like local councils to work with because it is one single entity, not multiple groupings. Kotahitanga gives greater economic clout when dealing with the Crown, local authorities and corporates. For whakatohatoha, there is the risk of losing cohesion on a regional level. Groupings invest and grow assets alone without a shared vision. Duplication of projects and duplication of administration work would lead to wasted resources. There would also potentially be tension and uncertainty about which assets go to which group. The cons for mahi tahi are complexity of the concept. Unlike whakatohatoha and kotahitanga, which are more straightforward, it requires greater consensus between groupings. The cons for kotahitanga are that whānau, hapu and iwi are distant from decision-making. The ability to exercise mana motu hake is limited, and there is potentially a perception that members would be disempowered due to their distance from decision-making. So, those are the three concepts. To see these laid out next to each other and in more detail, go to page 12 of the information booklet or to our website. Let's now recap on the timeline and what we would like to know from you. We are holding our first series of Engagement Hui this month. In November, we will come back to you with further details once we have considered your feedback. November is also when our settlement legislation is likely to be read in Parliament for a second time. In February next year, we plan on holding a ratification process on the special resolutions required by our trust deed, where we will ask you to vote on our potential asset and representation arrangements. In March, the legislation is likely to pass its final reading, with a settlement date in May 2018. That will bring to an end over 30 years of mahi on this important kaupapa. However, it is just the beginning of our new era. By the end of July 2018, we will need to complete the amendments to the trust deed by special resolution, and in October there will be new trustee elections. So, as you can see, it is a busy time but an exciting one. You can provide feedback in the workshop shortly through our Facebook page or the feedback form on our website. Remember, you decide on the final asset and representation arrangements. During our second round of engagement, we will seek your further feedback on the proposed models. Then the initial trustees will make recommendations, and all adult registered members will have the opportunity to vote on the special resolutions. So, please check with whānau to ensure they are registered. If not, tell them to head to our website now. We'll now have questions and answers. Before we do, we have the following ground rules. Please respect others and remain quiet so that their question can be heard clearly. Please identify yourself when you speak, as we have to record your name in our meeting minutes. Please keep questions related to the aspirations, values and principles, or the 3 concepts outlined today. For other matters, please talk to one of your representatives who are here today. Nō reira, from all of us at Tātou o Te Wairoa Trust, ngā mihi.
Not the 14 trustees. So we need your support, we need your feedback, we need your help. I want you to go out there, spread the word, check members, make sure they're registered, provide the feedback on what we're trying to achieve here, which is quite unique. It's not kind of been done elsewhere where the members get to decide what the final settlement model is. Usually this is kind of already set up in the pre-settlement phase. It transitions smoothly into post-settlement. Obviously this time around we're looking at a concept that it's unique, and hopefully it's going to be encompassing of everyone's values and principles, and encourage everyone to participate in this process. And also the trustees here present at the back, you see the Manny there, you got Oa Manuel, who you heard, and Janina Symes here today, and Cowan Jones down the front. So just acknowledge our trustees for the work they're putting into this effort and getting this work today. Anyone got any questions to start? Remember, questions we want to focus on our journey to here and the process going forward. There may be some questions you might want to have regarding the workshop content detail, about the models, concepts we presented. Kind of save that, we're going to break that into the next part. But yeah, anyone got any particular questions regarding?
Kia ora tātou te whānau, kia ora tātou te whānau ko tāne huata ahau, he mopunau nā te ohanga kahu tāpiri huata, rau ko te hongarorangi, no Ngāti Kahuri ki te Wairoa, no ngō whakāta o ko iwi. I'm looking at these 3 different proposals for what we want to do, and what's really important to me is that these assets come to the people. And I'd like to know how, within the current model, that it will come back to the people. I believe in structure, and we've put you guys there in Tātou. We've voted for you, we trust in you, you have our voice. But I am also concerned about how the assets eventually come back to the people. And to me, I like what Here Pona is doing in terms of marae, how assets have come back to the marae. Therefore, it goes out to a wide group of everybody that are associated with those marae. I'd be interested if, I'd like to know how many marae are in the current cluster structure, how many people are registered within those marae, how many of those marae are working marae, how many of those marae are set up or need support. So that would actually, that would give me my answer. If we have marae that are struggling, then we need to support them in terms of their setup. It's about engaging our people, and it's about all these assets coming back to the marae via our people. So, and one of the boundaries of the marae, what's the actual boundaries? I know it's probably already written in here, but the boundaries that we're going with, is it the district council boundaries, is it, the iwi boundaries, what's the story there? And so how many marae do we actually have within this current structure model, 7 clusters? And then I would also think, well, if we want the assets to come back to the marae, then how many marae are in each cluster, and how will the fairness be divided up accordingly? Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a model based on, a grouping model based on marae. So obviously we haven't yet predetermined what that grouping model is. If it's marae, is it hapu, or currently within a grouping of clusters. So we want, particularly your question is a good question for apply the principles we have in the workshop in the next phase. how that works. Currently, there is no kind of set structure. We haven't got a set, we haven't gone out and sought Marai's mandate to sort that this is where they belong in this particular cluster, or this hapu belongs in this particular cluster. It's been a loose arrangement up until now. So obviously to get to a formal relation to that kind of stage, we would need direction from the members to say that a Marae-based model is what they want, and then we would go down that process. Obviously we haven't made that decision that the Marae-based model is the way to go first. We want everyone's opinion about it may be a grouping of Marae is the way to go. And then we go down that process. So not to predetermine the path, we want everyone's opinion about which is the best way to do this.
At least 5 of those questions you could take straight into the workshop and then look at that conceptual model from left all the way to right, because part of what you're saying can work better in some parts of that process than others. So the next part in the workshop is to really sort of dig in. E pai ngā pātai, pai ngā pātai.
All feedback's good feedback.
Tēnā tātou, ko Angela Kāriri tēnā I mi atu kia koutou, katoa I taku taha rongo mai wahine, he oi e hono ki rā kaipāka hoki. I'm just seeking guidance now, because when I registered and voted, although I had hononga to several parts of this, I was allocated to only one, to my rongo mai wahine side, which is all good with me. But I'm just trying to figure out, I'm hearing something different in the communications, and I'm hearing something far more broader than what we originally voted through. Am I hearing that correct? Because in my mind, I'm looking back at my whakapapa, which defines my future, all those sorts of things. And so in the context of making a good decision about the 3 concepts, because I think the aspirations, values and principles that have been put up by the whanaunga, our whanaunga, are very, very clever and very, very relevant for 21st century purposes. But I'm just thinking about the 3 concepts. How can I be totally clear what you're actually asking? Are you asking me for standardisation, are you? Because I came through on another lens. So some clarification about that would be really, really appreciated.
Yeah, got it. Obviously, when we went through the negotiations with the Crown, we were restricted by Crown policy. And through the negotiations, we settled with one comprehensive single settlement. So for that purpose, we all registered under one umbrella, which is tātou. Obviously, everyone has different whakapapa connections back home. They can whakapapa into different clusters, maybe more than others. That would be resulted in imbalance if it were based on my whakapapa. Obviously, for equitability's sake, we needed to make sure that only one person had one vote. But in terms of a model going forward, your whakapapa could stretch into various different groupings, and you can then participate at that level, whether it's through receiving ownership of the assets or participating in representation. So you're not restricted in terms of ability to participate. But as a collective, I think we should stay as an equitable, that a member is representative equally, not based on your whakapapa connection, but if you want to benefit, you benefit from your whakapapa connections. Yeah, so for here we're trying to develop, the model, whether there is a model out there that'll represent all encompassing of everyone's connections. It came up yesterday. I've got various connections into various different clusters. Now, how can I, if one part of me wants to go that way, and one part of me over here wants to go another way, how do we reconcile that kind of difference in me? One wants devolution, maybe one wants some amalgamation. That's the difficulty we're going to have in reaching a consensus about what is going to be the best model going forward.
Your whakapapa is your whakapapa. Nothing about that changes. There is a part here where in the clusters at the moment, and that might change, that's up for change, is it allows us to have better decision making or faster decision making. What I'd suggest is take that question into the workshops and then look across that whole spectrum and you define where that works best for you.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Laura Kelly toku ingoa no nai te rā katoa. So I'm just going to go on aspiration 1 for now, given that's the guideline. Titiro whakamuri kia mohio ai ko koe te huarahi kei mua I a koe. So we've got to know our past before we move into the future, which brings me to page 21 of this booklet. Now, when Te Rā Katoa went into the cluster arrangements, we allowed Rongo Mai Wahine to join us. I see on page 21, however, kia ora, so I see on page 21 we're actually been removed out of the right-hand side. We have asked you, and thank you for being there, Leon, as our representative for our cluster, why is it that during our cluster hui minutes, Te Rā Katoa always has to get up and remind Rongo Mai Wahine that we allowed the whānau to enter into this process. Our natural allies, as you do understand, is Rākai Pāka. And I know you understand this, Leon. So therefore, my question is, why is it we going forward with Te Rā Katoa being marginalised with the rest of the hapu? Kia ora.
Kia ora, that's a good question. That's a question that should be answered back at the cluster level. Obviously, the discussions need to be had there. Regarding the back page, it's just a reflection currently where we're at. It stimulates this type of discussions regarding representation. So obviously, that's a key question. There are other questions about the list at the back, obviously, people may not be aware of, but those questions reside back at where, how we best group ourselves, whether it's through the marae, through a hapu list or whatever. But those questions are best answered back at home.
They were asked back home, Leon, which is why I brought up the hapu minutes. Yeah. And each and every time Te Rā Katoa have asked, why do we keep it being taken off the left-hand side of the column? Clearly in Appendix 1 of the Zeta Settlement, we are 51 alongside Rongo Mai Wahine. Yep. Yet here, we've been losing our voice. We've lost our voice, Leon, because you our representatives, aren't asking Te Rā Katoa what we want.
I don't think you've lost your voice. This is the opportunity to have your voice.
Well, according to the trustee, whatever
having your voice
is not ratified yet,
so
our representatives are right.
yeah, well, no. Obviously, these are cluster issues that remain back here at the cluster. They need to be discussed at the cluster.
Yes, my rep, Leon. Can you give me an answer why Te Rā Katoa keeps continually being left off this list?
It's on the list. They're in the booklet. They're in the list. So obviously, some of these issues need to be dealt with.
I understand that. I've just explained that to you, Leon, but we've gone around in circles. Why are we being left off this column? Clearly, we've been the granted letter.
Yeah.
I know, because I was a research assistant for them.
So obviously when we move to the next phase, some of these are the discussions that we need to have through your trustees. Bring them up at your trustee meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Johnny.
Kia ora tātou, John Whanga, nā te Rākai Pāka, nā te kahunu, nā te Rongo Mai Wahine. E aku whanaunga tēnā no tātou katoa. Tōku mihi tuatai ki a koutou nā kai te aki o tātou o te Wairoa. E kaue anei ngā pātai nui ki mui te araro o tātou te whakamininga, nā uri whakaheke o te rohe o te Wairoa. Nā reira, ka mihi atu ki a koutou. I te rānei, kei te tutuki koutou, i te mahi, mā koutou, mā o koutou nei Pakihiwi. Hei arahi. Nā reira, tōku mihi tuatahi kia koutou tēnā koutou. My question is really around assets. I don't really want to talk about representation and stuff, we'll get into that in the workshop. But I think there are some, obviously as people are raised, there are different ways of looking at representation, depending on what you think is important. I think that's most probably stuff we can deal with in more detail in the workshops. What I am interested in as a question is tātou o te Wairoa going to look beyond ownership of assets to the benefits that accrue from them? And I'm not trying to be a smart ass here. They're quite different. Owning something doesn't necessarily guarantee you something. And yet there seems to be an assumption made sometimes, and you can see it in the pros and cons, that owning something merely gives you something. One of the things I think you will need to drill into in quite a bit more detail is how you get benefits. First of all, what are those benefits that we are seeking? Those will start with our aspirations. and then how you might achieve them. But my question is tātou o te Wairoa going to look beyond asset ownership to actually looking at how you get benefits from those assets over time?
Yeah, it's definitely, that comes back down to your, I guess, representation, how you derive your representation, and then how you derive your benefits from, whether your benefits are derived from a singular entity, or they derived from groupings as such. And that's something, a decision that we all collectively need to make, or where those benefits are derived from. I mean, it could mean collectively the assets are held collectively, but distribution of the benefits go to groupings, and then from there you get your individual benefits and entitlement. So that's a decision that we all need to make. But good work for the kōrero for the workshops.
I think the answer is a profound yes. And that has to be part of what we're looking at. We've got about another 14, 15 months in terms of being initial trustees. And I think part of the discussion that we're having today, and it's just the start, the next discussion we're going to be having in November, is that question needs to be ringing in our ears all the way through this process. It's not just about static ownership, it's actually about how we grow value over and above the 100 million, or the 88 million, whichever way you look at it. But the answer is yes, it has to be part of this equation moving forward. Tēnā koe mo tō pātai, Johnny.
E whakapapa ana ke mai te ipu, teipu ki taku tuahine. Te ipu, ko ruataki tuni, ko tini tō tarangi, ko terenga nohu, ka moia aia, e hipora te apatu, ka puta ko kauiaka, āreta te apatu, ka moia aia, harata matete, no rungo whakata, ka puta ko patu te rito, ka moia aia, e hipora, te waitangi ora, ka puta taku karaua, te kahua te rangi, ka puta, ka moia aia, aira Bartlett, ka puta taku pāpa, mokena te rito. Kotahita te pātai, how will conflicts of interest be managed?
Good question. Obviously, we haven't yet set up a specific process around that. Obviously, we haven't preempted what the model might look like. Obviously, under an amalgamation model, there is no conflict of interest. We all collectively as one. But as we move into more of the collaboration and evolution, there will need to be a process for which that occurs. Obviously, the trustees have not yet decided or gone down any of those, asking those hard questions. Once we sought feedback and guidance in terms of the particular direction we are heading, and then we'll establish those processes. But for now, we are bound by, obviously, there's some conflict resolution within our trustee. Obviously, we rely on the kaumata kahui that we're about to form. Obviously, we've gone through a process there of nominating and selecting kaumatua for our council. They are at this stage our process for which, if there is any conflict regarding issues regarding that, we'll refer to them in that instance.
How will conflicts of interest be managed? We do that as part of tātou in the way that we have our discussions and have our meetings, and part of it come back to the values. So it's about transparency, it's about honesty, it's about integrity. All of those values, like what we have in the booklet, causes us to manage conflicts of interest. It's the same question we can put on each of our marae and at each of our hui and at each of our discussions. How do the values and the principles that we abide by go through all of the kōrero and the discussions that we have? It's a relevant question not only for here, but actually puta no i te motu kai runga i te marae.
Tamati?
Tēnā tātou, I'll stand down here. It feels good to be able to ask questions. Tautukoa ki ngā mintua e tōku rangatira e tōku tuakana e hone. Me ngā pātai ko tuku. I think a couple of observations first, and a question. So the question around marae, tuahine, there's debate. It hovers between 36 and 39 marae. Puta noi te rohe o te Wairoa, and that's if we're counting our other half of our whānau, Ngāti Pāhau Wera. Anei taku pātai e pāna ki ngā marae tuatahi. In the deed of settlement, there is no mention whatsoever of marae. There is mention of whānau, hapu, and iwi. And I think we need to be really clear about that. And because whānau, hapu, iwi are about tangata. Marae is about building. Ki te wera te marae, ka mate ka ngaro te hapu e kao. So we can lose our marae, but our hapu will still be intact. It's only a building. And I just offer a bit of caution around focusing on marae, which brings me to my second point. People. And I'm not seeing focus on people in any of these groupings. We're talking about groupings, clusters, taha. When we done the deed of settlement, we had a big whawhai with the Crown. We agreed on, well, we must have this amount of people. And I think it was 26,000, something like that. We thought we had about 32,000 people, beneficiaries. And out of those 32,000 beneficiaries, we're also very aware that 73% upwards live outside of te rohe o te Wairoa. Doesn't make us any less Ngāti Kahunguni ki te Wairoa, rongo mai wahine, rākai pāka, te aha. But our realities are out of te rohe o te Wairoa. And my question around that is, how are we going to ensure that we are keeping our people to the fore of our thinking when we are bringing these aspirations to life, wherever they may be? Because, and looking at where things are driving to, it insinuates that somehow we have to be in Wairoa or plugged in back there. And for some of us, that's never going to happen, but that doesn't make them any less entitled. The other point, the other question, that's a point. When we're talking about assets and money, it's either 88 million or 100, whichever way you want to cut it, and 2 half shares in Patunamu Forest and Wharerata Forest. So it's money and 2 half shares in the forest. That's what we slice and dice if we choose to. Not, so just so we're clear about what it is, we're actually talking about money and 2 half shares and 2 forests. That's the asset base. So the first question is, how do we ensure balance in our beneficiaries, wherever they might be? And the second one is more about clarity on what we're talking about. Kia ora.
Kia ora tāmi, excellent. On your first question there regarding the balance in the trust deed, it's pretty specific that we just need to hold a special annual general meeting back in Wairoa to have this process all run and dusted. Obviously the trustees have realised when looking at the database of who are currently registered and where our members live, that they majority reside outside of Wairoa. So obviously this roadshow engagement hui is over and above what is required in our trustee to do. So we're incorporating this as the initial feedback where we go out as wide as possible to get everyone's opinions through the workshops, through the questions and answers, so then they can feed back into the trustee process of holding the special general meeting and then going through the process of starting the review in terms of the aspects of the asset ownership and governance arrangement. Now the assets, obviously, as you said, there is financial, commercial assets, but obviously there's also some relationship assets. Now that gets a bit difficult when you start to work out how we're going to break those relationship agreements up in terms of a devolution model. It's easy to break up the money in the forest, which is simple to do, but key relationships with government agencies, the Tuirutu board,
and the Matangiro board, all those type of relationships are not as easy to divulge in some aspects. So there is some pertinent questions to had regarding those issues regarding assets, but I think that's all good work for the workshop session.
Good point about people. We've got about 13 or 14 that are connected on live streaming at the moment, so all of our hui have been live streamed. Since the Wairoa hui on Friday, we've had about 400 hits in terms of the website. The census data some years ago told us, but the other part of the answer is actually from yourselves as well. Talk to your whānau, get them connected and get them registered.
By capturing you here today, we want you to go out and spread the word about getting involved, get registered, participate in the feedback process. Keep an eye on obviously the social media aspect is one of our key engagement medias nowadays. Not just like the papers that used to be. You put the ad in the paper and people turn up, but nowadays our members are online, and that's where we need to capture them and then get them to provide the information that we need to have. So at the end of the day, it's the decisions made by you and instruct us what to do in terms of moving forward.
Tēnā tātou, I just want to say firstly thank you to, I guess Te Tira Whakaimi and tātou o Te Wairoa for their mahi on behalf of our people. I've got a few questions. The first one in regards to the models, how they've been arrived at. Has it been based on current models that are operating well in our country? We know we have some good models out there throughout the country that we can learn from, and so I'd just like to know the kind of history behind where these three models come from. A second, I don't have a book, but in terms of values, I'm not sure if I saw whakapapa, kaitiakitanga, and te tiriti o Waitangi on there, which shifts me into my third kōrero. I just want to think in terms of the kōrero that has come through. If we're looking at representation, then I believe wholeheartedly that we need to teach our people why we're in the place we're in now. And it does lead from that whakatauki right at the beginning. Some of our people don't get this. We know we've got lots of passionate ninjas or kahungunu people around, but they don't get why we're even here in the first place. So what I'd like to see, and I think it is a kōrero around marae, that I'm not sure in terms of putting money into marae, and some marae haven't been able to support themselves. Some are not operating, some are operating really well. But I think that's where, for me anyway, being disconnected from my hapu, my people, going back to the marae was where I started my journey about my identity as Ngāti Kahungunu. So I'm looking maybe a little bit down the track. Obviously got a feeling for the collaboration approach, so we can keep key players up, having the movers and shakers up there, but also coming down to our people, and it is marae. For me. So yeah, and in terms of the whakatauki, how we're going to teach our people why we're in the place we're in now, why we have to make these decisions around 2 shares of 2 forests, and have all this money to start building our people up. Our children don't know who they are. Kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora. Obviously it's good kōrero for the workshops. Just to go to clarification, we've decided here they are concepts, not models. The next engagement Hui roadshow we'll be having will be the detailed models about best practice of what's going out there currently with other PSG entities. This is just a high level conceptual to begin with. We want to start high level with the values, principles, aspirations first, and then the next phase is with the detail in terms of these are the various different options based on what is out there with other entities. So for now, we just want to start high level, obviously get engaged. Introduce ourselves, this is what the trust is, this is what we're going, this is where we want to go to in the next 12 months. All right.
Sorry, just yeah, I'll come back around. I'll come and chat.
I think the other part, Leon's quite right, we've come in really wide in terms of concepts. Every current PSG that is operating, other iwi, they all fit somewhere within there. Our question is, where's your sense of where we should be?
Kia ora te whānau, nei rā te mihi mai oha kia koutou katoa. Ko Trinity Thompson Brown tōku ingoa, ko Riwi Tamihana tōku tūpuna. Just to follow on from the kōrero about engagement, I guess I was just wondering how all the values and aspirations of where the iwi want to go, how those relate to young Māori like myself who are disconnected from their iwitanga, what it means to be Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairoa, and what the iwi can do to, I guess, better engage with young Māori, just because of the fact that I only found out about things like tātou and kaupapa Māori environments because I went searching, and I went searching quite stringently to try and find my hononga, my iwitanga, and even now it's still very much fractured, and that wasn't through any fault of my own, but through my whakapapa and disconnection and whāngaitanga. And I guess that would happen with a lot of young Māori if, say, their parents had been in state care, which has happened with a lot of Māori over the time. So I guess I'm just wondering how all these values and aspirations and where we're wanting to move forward as an iwi, how they relate to young Māori or Māori who are disconnected, because like, I think you guys are saying that there's like 25,000 or more that were Wairoa, but only 7,000 or something were registered, and it's like, how can we get our people engaged if they're not even at the table? How can we hear their voices if they don't even know what their hapu is? How can we get them engaged if they don't know their marae or anything like that? Because any organisation is based on the people, and if you don't have the people at the table, it's like you're missing part of the kōrero. And so I just wanted to, I guess, hear what can we do to engage young Māori in, I guess, where there is that space of disconnect. Kia ora.
Yeah. Kia ora, and thanks for that. There's probably two aspects to your point you're raising there, and it applies equally. We're finding through the registration process a lot of our members are not quite sure on where they go in terms of their current cluster arrangement. So that's something that we as Tātou Trust will need to address and work on going through to the next 6 months at least, to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the current arrangements and where they fit. Obviously that's one point, but also the second point regarding rangatahi, that came up yesterday in our workshops regarding, you know, how is their voice going to be heard through all this? Obviously we've got a kaumātua council there. What's the opportunity to have a rangatahi council as well to sit along? Those are some of the aspects that the trustees are going to be looking at, and this is what the feedback we want from you regarding these particular issues.
I think there's another part too, and that is there's an enduring perspective. There's a fact that we all know, ka whānau mai te tangata, ka mate te tangata. And somehow we have to find some endurance about what we're doing today, and we rely on rangatahi to be interested and excited about this, to pick it up and take it forward. If your values aren't in there, then we need to know what your values are. Otherwise you will not be excited by what this is or what it can be.
There's also a lot that we can learn from your experiences with regards to, because obviously I'm no longer in the rangatahi bracket. So there's a lot that we can learn from your experiences, and we don't have to be in the rocket to contribute either, so you can continually feed those experiences as you're talking with your own whanaunga and friends, feed it back to us and become active in there.
Well, kia ora tātou, ko Lisa Collins tōku ingoa. I whakapapa te Wairoa through my nanny, Poti Poti Hapi Mana. I would like to talk about the aspiration that's in the booklet. So there is a gap I can see on te reo and culturally strong. So, you know, I think the thing is that we're all at different ends of the spectrum here. We've all got different stories. And so some of us are wanting things more than others. So for me, I'm probably keen to more focus on my, like being more connected to my reo, to our reo, our Wairoa reo in history, understanding, the kōrero there, and that might be different to someone who's living in Wairoa and already is, well connected. So one thing I did want to also raise is, $100 million sounds like a lot of money, but I think when we get down to it, when we're establishing our structures to manage our assets, it actually costs a lot of money to run these things, and so we've got to be really clear about the decisions we're making. And so I'd like to see better data around, the picture that we're currently working with. So the number of marae, how strong they are, our people who are living in Wairoa, how do we build them, their capability and capacity, and how do we also draw on the skills and experience of whānau who are not living in Wairoa, and how do we work together to build a stronger whānau. So yeah, I think in terms of gaps and aspirations, te reo and strong culture for me, the values and principles, there's actually a lot, and they all kind of sound good to me, but I think at the end of the day, we've got to be realistic. We're not going to, completely change overnight when the settlement money comes through, so we've got to be really clear about what we're working with, and what our priorities are. Is it education, and is it, or is it economic development, or is it building strong marae, or is it a mix, and how do we do that, and building a timeline for that. So kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you for that. There's a lot to take out of there in terms of what we need to go away as trustees and collate regarding marae and that sort of work that we need to do, so that's excellent. So I think it's a good opportunity now that we break for workshops, and Piri here will direct us into where we like to be. Oh, one more.
Sorry, Adrian Tangaro Wagner, tēnei te matua te kapua matatoru. I just wanted to ask, and it might be still a bit of a state secret, but what kind of investments are you thinking of getting into? Because that could also inform everyone here which way to go in terms of representation and all that kind of stuff, and working together and being collaborative.
The trustees' perspective is that we haven't decided on any kind of asset investment portfolios or anything like that. We want our members to come back first and decide on what it should look like first, rather than preempt anything in terms of focusing on the assets. We're trying to take away that. Focus on the assets, let's focus on values and principles and build the model from that first. Apa?
There'll come a time when that should be part of the discussion. We're a wee bit premature before we get that. The other part is we don't actually have anything at the moment. It won't come through until about March or later. So it's a discussion for later on. There is nothing lost in between now and then.
Right. Workshop done. Right. Hang on, Pete.
Yesterday we tried something, and I want to see if we can try it again today. We noticed in the Wairoa Hui, we had at least 109 who came to the Wairoa Hui, and a lot of our whakake, our kaumātua, found it hard to compete with the figure. So what we want to do today is we're going to split into two workshops. After the workshops, when we come back in here, we'll have another Q&A, another question time. But I'm wondering, because it's slightly warmer in here, we'll keep our kaumātua. He taumata noa ka koutou ngā kaumātua, ngā kuia karau. He Wairoa noa ka koutou. And so we want to keep our kuia karau in here, so please, you're going to say, oh, what determines or defines a kuia karau? I'm not going to answer that. I'll leave it up to you. We'll be just interested to see who stays behind. But ngā mea rangatahi, ngā mea